Hi, this is Sarah with Family Forward Project, North Carolina. I'm kind of the organizer for the Guilford County branch, Parents Against Loss. I'd like to talk to you today about a subject that is very rarely encroached on, except for when the media covers it, which is basically the death of our children while they are in the custody and care of Department of Social Services, or they have been reported as children who need intervention, but Department of Social Services will, for whatever reason, not come to the aid of the children. We've seen such cases lately as Mariah Woods, where there was some divorce issues and some custody issues that needed to be addressed by Department of Social Services that could have prevented the death of an innocent child. We've got cases in North Carolina that have just been atrocious, where there's been abuse reported and a mother sold her child to pay off a $200 debt, and her child was raped and killed, a little 5-year-old girl. Just these things where children who we're supposed to be protecting as parents, firstly, and society, secondly, are just heartbreaking. And I just have to say, I know that nobody's perfect and that our system is not perfect, but there is a huge responsibility on behalf of society as a whole to step in when the risk in a home is unacceptable. Now, I have to add that when I first started getting into this cause, I realized that I was not going to do a parenting class for Department of Social Services. They shouldn't have taken my children anyway. I had no issues with parenting skills. Why would you make me take a class? So what I did was I actually took an online course that North Carolina Abuse Prevention and Education will actually give you. You get a certificate of service, or a certificate of completion, really, when you're done. And I learned more about abuse and what it is, the signs to look for, that sort of thing. It's very useful to go through. The course was very educational, I'll say that. And one thing I did learn is that we have risk factors and safety factors for every home in America. Every home in America has risk factors for abuse, neglect, and dependency. And society has the ability to strengthen the safety factors for each home. So we do that. We do that in organizations. There's a SIDS organization that works with parents having proper sleep care, cribs, things like that for their children, so that reduces risk. We have, awareness days. We have things that go on, but there's not a collective support for those things. They're just small, like skirmishes, I guess, in the battle. And then we have a little bit larger instances, like the Women's Resource Center, the IRC in Greensboro here. We have organizations that are willing to help with resources and things like that. Shelters all across the state. For divorce custody, we're supposed to be able to depend on legal aid. So, there's no shortage. The thing is, for the family cause, our direction, our aim, is to investigate, prevent, and address the issues of our children in Department of Social Services care and custody who are dying, who are being abused, who are being legally taken advantage of. It's one thing to have a child die naturally and grieve, but I literally can't imagine what it's like to have your child be taken from you, whether or not your child should have been taken, and to have your child die outside of your care and supervision. I've spoken with one or two moms about their cases. Not necessarily their cases, their feelings and emotions and loss, complete loss, when their children die in DSS custody and care, and they are not treated respectfully, honorably, with dignity and compassion. And here they are with not only loss of life, but loss of importance for their own life. And it's just devastating on a family as a whole, not just the parents and the children who are lost, but grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, friends of the family. It's just hardcore. So one of the things that I would like to see addressed on January 6th for the Family Forward North Carolina project meeting is the mortality rate and statistics that aren't there, the audits that aren't there, the things that are not being done in our state to address a very grave issue. And I'd kind of like to show you what was put together a little bit so that I could come to a better understanding what our needs are for the state, in my opinion, and maybe what we can share with our state about what needs to be done so that there are, there are going to be deaths, but fewer deaths, responsibility for those deaths, accountability, and care and concern that we just need to give each other as human beings when loss of life is considered. So this was kind of what I was up to last night. I will turn you around here. See if I can do that. Bet you there's a better way to turn you around here. Oh, I guess not. So you're just going to have to see my crazy living room. Alright, first thing we've got going on here, we got Spectrum providing our background music here. But I'm going to share with you a little bit about a note that we have here. We've got on our Parents Against Loss page on Facebook. If you're not on there, I would highly suggest you follow it. We have a note. North Carolina's abuse, neglect, and dependency are first in flight children. Kind of use the theme as of the dove. I wrote North Carolina is known as the first in flight state, and so in this note we address child mortality in regards to A&D cases, as well as honor both those who have passed due to ineffective assistance by DSS or harmful interference by DSS. We also seek to remember the parents who have committed suicide because of these reasons. Parents always have the responsibility to protect their children from harm, especially circumstances that cause imminent danger or exigent circumstances, but it is especially egregious when the Department of Social Services is aware of impending danger for a child and refuses to act for whatever reason. Unfortunately, our state doesn't take initiative to audit and investigate deaths of our children while in DSS custody, or due to the neglect of the department to act on information they've been given in regards to children who have died. We must hear about these atrocities in the news. By then, it's too late. And go here. And this is not an ultimate list, but it is a partial list of those children who have been failed by parents or caregivers and the Department of Social Services in the county which was responsible for them. We have quite a few on there. If you'd like a name of a parent who has taken their own life because of family court issues, or child protective services issues, divorce custody cases, please email us at parentsagainstloss@gmail.com with the information, and we will very honorably and gladly put the name up for in memory. We don't want to forget. And then it talks a little bit about North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. We really don't have very much information that is publicly given, at least that I can find online, about these things. Now, we do have a setup for review. It's basically a review board that's supposed to be for every county and one generalized in the state, which I'll get to in a minute. But we're not really seeing what we need to see, information, and then addressing the problem. So it also links to our national level address of this issue in 2016. It's called Within Our Reach, a National Strategy to Eliminate Child Abuse, Neglect, Fatalities. It is a PDF online. If you go to the PALS site and look through our notes, you'll find this note. You can find all these links in there. So what that's kind of about, I started a little binder of information. So I'm going to let you guys look through that just real briefly. The links for most of these things are in that note in the Parents Against Loss Online. So the first thing we have in the binder here, we have the Within Our Reach, a National Strategy to Eliminate Child Abuse, Neglect, Fatalities. The final report, 2016. It does go through quite a bit. It talks about, imagine, there's no deaths in society, there's no neglect, there's no abuse. That'll never be 100% happen, but what can we do to make sure that it rarely, if ever, happens? It's a very, very good report. They do cover quite a bit. I just feel like one of the problems that we have in society is that we can come up with the problems. This is our problem. We've got abuse, we've got neglect, we've got dependency, we've got deaths. So here's the problem. And then we kind of end there. Or we get to the point where here's the problem. We form a committee to solve the problem. And then it's not solved. Or I'm going to be honest, I've seen a single case of abuse, neglect, and dependency change legislation for the entire state and other families, when that single case may not reflect the majority of what's going on with society, and it may, which in some cases I've seen, again in my opinion, violate constitutional rights. So, for instance, with the death of Rylan Ott, horrible death, where the mother was being negligent after she was given her child back, and he drowned. So a law was created and legislation was changed, but now police officers in North Carolina can take children without social work being involved. We already had a problem with our children being taken with no effective or consistent or actually filled out assessments. And now we have the issue of where the police officers can take children without having a background in social work. So while they're able to recognize the criminal part of abuse, neglect, and dependency cases, they're not able to recognize the follow-through steps, the due process that we're supposed to have in order to protect our family's rights. 7B 100 does tell you that our constitutional rights are supposed to be protected as part of the purpose of neglect, dependency, and abuse statutes. So if you can get the opportunity to go through this report, this is a national, federal level. The report is, it's pretty good. It's got a lot of input, a lot of information, a lot of history. Okay, and then we get into, you can see there, we have Article 14, North Carolina Child Fatality Prevention System. We have the Declaration of the Public Policy, the task force that's appointed for the state. As you see, there's a lot of people that are supposed to be in that task force. And let's see if I can get that in there for you guys. Yeah, I'll just put it on the couch so you can see better. Okay. Talks about the local levels. They're called community child protection teams. All right, you're supposed to have local levels of professional involvement to review cases that are especially linked to fatalities, but is not just linked to fatalities. From what we're getting, the advocates that I've been talking to, is that this is also supposed to cover prevention of fatalities. So if you're covering the cases that don't end in fatalities, you're working on prevention. It does also, this binder does also cover North Carolina DSS policies and procedures. Here's a 7-day review of foster care in-home services. All these things you can find out online. We have the practice notes in regards. We have a North Carolina Child Fatality Prevention Team. The executive summary of 2014. I cannot find one that is 15 or 16 or 17. So I kind of feel like, where's the public information that we need to see for the statistics, so we can encourage people to act. And then you have things like infant mortality statistics from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. They really don't say anything about Department of Social Services, but they'll even go via county for each death rate, and that's, I believe, just the infants, not the actual children in general. There's just kind of a lack of information out there. Talks about the statutes again, but this also does cover North Carolina Administrative Code. It's in there. Now, the community teams actually function under the federal CAPTA Act. So that's kind of what this is right here. Let's see the NCDSS policies and procedures concerning community child protection teams. Their purpose is actually to do the prevention and address the fatality, but they're not really seeing very much of that in the news or in public interest. I haven't heard it yet in a county commissioners board. See another 2014 report. Here's what I was able to find for Guilford County specifically. Their update was 2015 of May. And now here's the 2017. They awarded a SIDS organization for passing out cribs and stuff to families so that they could prevent possibly infant death. And then we kind of get into the hardcore thing where we're starting to keep track now, or at least I am as an advocate, about the deaths of our children. The media will tell you that we have families, we have children that Department of Social Services knew these children were being abused, or they had multiple reports. This was the Ryland Otts. There's a little Ryland there. But Department of Social Services really isn't, it's the inside. You can't just think that you have a problem that one group can solve when that one group is going to be imperfect and also need accountability, because they're still human beings too. Fayetteville Observer covers a whole series of the deaths of these children in regards to North Carolina's child welfare system. And no, Greg Barnes, he's a writer for the Times here, the Fayetteville. He's got a good article. Does North Carolina do enough to prevent child deaths? And we actually don't. We don't do enough. we can sit there and talk, we can form committees, but we're not going to actually take the action that's required to do this. So then, you know, we've got these kids. I mean, just going through these stories of these kids that have died, you know, horrible deaths. I can't even tell you how horrible these deaths have been. You know, warning signs missed in the case. We gotta have some accountability here. You know, this little girl was supposed to come home to extended family in North Carolina and didn't, and was murdered. You know, that's ICPC. We're not just failing children in North Carolina, we're failing children that need to come here for safety. So I just want to let you know, that's kind of what we're doing as far as covering child mortality issues, as well as, you know, what do we need to do in North Carolina? What do we need to do to make sure that we're really truly providing safety for our children, and we're intervening before death happens? The seizure of our children, whether or not it's unconstitutional and violations of due process, is hard enough. But then you add child mortality on there, and it's too overwhelming. So on January 6th in Wilmington, North Carolina, Family Forward Project North Carolina, and Parents Against Loss, which is the Guilford County branch, we are going to address that briefly, and we're going to give an opportunity for legislators to ask questions. We are inviting the members of the task force for North Carolina to come. If they'd like to speak, that's great. If they'd just like to listen or ask questions, that's great too. If they don't want to come, we will go to them. I'm also going to be reaching out within the next couple of days for the community prevention boards across the state. I would like an answer from every county. What are you guys doing? Are you being active? Are you active in your local community? Do you have a plan for 2018? I don't need to know about specific cases, but, you know, how do you hold yourself accountable? What kind of meetings have you had in the last year? What have you showed the public about what you're doing and what you're trying to do? What organizations have you worked with? Let's see what they're doing with that silent appointment of prevention and addressing fatality. You know, how many cases have you looked over the last year? Do you have any public members on your board? I know there's a huge confidentiality issue when you're on that board, and that's for a reason, because it's a sensitive subject. But do you actually have more than just the government agents that the statutes mandate? So let's take a look at that issue. Let's address what we can. Let's form plans, but let's also follow through with these plans, because our children deserve it. Our future deserves it. North Carolina, we owe it to them. This is Sarah signing off.